Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome again to another podcast episode on Talk Architecture with your host, Naziaty Mohd Yaacob. There will be a series on women and architecture, and I would just like to do some reflections based on an article that I found in www.forbes.com. I'll just provide the link in the description. And the title of this article is 5 Reasons Why We Don't See More Women in Leadership Roles. Now, my intention is to actually dig deeper on issues pertaining to the lack of confidence for women in leadership roles in the context of architecture practice. So this is something to warm up some ideas, looking at a general article from somebody at the Forbes Council member and Forbes Business Council, and yet looking at the basis of architecture practice. So this reflection is, I hope, useful to you all out there. To actually think about things when I try to read the article and also try to comment. So Mila Smart Semeshkina is the founder and CEO of Lecterra.com, the president of the Women's Empowerment Council. So in this article, she gave an introduction that women have made significant progress in recent years in terms of breaking through the glass ceiling and achieving leadership positions. However, there are still challenges that women face that can make it difficult for them to become leaders. Based on my experience coaching women for more than 20 years, I have identified 5 major reasons why women often struggle to become leaders. So the first one is gender bias. One of the biggest barriers for women seeking leadership roles is the persistent gender bias that exists in many organizations. Research has shown that men are often seen as more competent and capable of leadership than women, even when they have the same qualifications. According to those researchers at the University at Buffalo School of Management, men tend to be more assertive and dominant, whereas women tend to be more communal, cooperative, and nurturing. As a result, men are more likely to participate and voice their opinions during group discussions and be perceived by others as leader-like. This bias can make it more difficult for women to be considered for leadership roles and can also impact their ability to advance within their organization. Now, I have been in this situation before where I was being critical about something in a meeting, but quickly a man would be assertive and they would even suggest that I'm being emotional when I was critical, not letting me or trying to gaslight me into thinking or doubting myself. Now, the thing is that done because I'm a woman? Or was it done because I was being critical in general? Now, I hear from women lawyers when they want to talk about gender bias, it needs to be a clear intention from the person who could be emotionally abusing you. It's clear, the intent is clear. Subsequently in what they say and what they do, or admittedly, it's not really easy in the context of working life to actually think, oh, that's a gender bias opinion. and they won't admit to it, or maybe they will stay silent if you were to approach them. But usually, working in a working situation, you don't want to tell the other person, hey, you're gender biased with that opinion, because there you are thinking that everything is as it should be in a meeting, that you are thinking about things intellectually and you're giving your opinion, and suddenly the other person says you're emotional. And then I realized later, many years later, that was a gender bias opinion that was given to me. And I have, if it is something that as a woman in an organization working side by side with men and women, you'd find yourself having to be second fiddle. You'd think that there is at the back of your mind, because culturally, in some cultures, in my culture, it's an Asian culture, where many people are Muslims, that the men, it was thought in that culture that the man is the leader. The man is supposed to be the leader. And then we start questioning it, because we're talking about intent, and we're talking about whether they want to solve the problem. So in that sort of, shall we say, complex situation where you're just doing your job, suddenly you're confronted with this stereotype or negativity. How are you gonna be on top of that? They did say, that was a quote that said that you need to have better skills and better knowledge to combat that, as if you're a woman wanting to get into leadership roles. I never actually think about, and this is the thing, I'm not generalizing, women are like that, but I think by talking to other women tend to downplay their aspiration or their ambitions in an organization, and they don't think there will be allies to help them and support them. Well, but that's one of the things that, apart from saying build your skills and knowledge, there was also this thing about building allies, which we will come later, or maybe it's in another article. But what I'm trying to say is that women are not that ambitious in a way that they try to build this up, There could be exceptions, and women who actually see that that problem and acknowledge that problem and try to rectify it to come to a position where they are in a leadership role. So the advice by the writer, Mila Smart Semeshkina, on gender bias is that one of the most effective ways for women to combat gender bias is invest in their own professional development. Yeah, this is the one. By building your skills and knowledge, you can better position yourself for success. It is also important to find allies in the workplace who can support you and help advocate for your ideas and contributions. With a network of supportive colleagues, you can better navigate the challenges of a biased workplace. When I think about the struggles that I had in the workplace environment, in the organization, I would reckon that women themselves need to be allies with each other. And it could be something that in any workplace, if someone is deemed as a threat to the other person in terms of their position or their arguments on the policies of the organization, they would try to do divisive a way of not getting the women to be strong together. It could be that it is left to chance, because it could be for many, many years that you see such a problem can occur. Because we're talking about being in your 50s, 45 years old and above is when you're getting to be senior and getting to those leadership roles, really. There are people younger than 45, of course, but I'm generally stating the issues of senior members having, quote unquote, to fight it off in an organization. Now, okay, we'll talk about the building skills and knowledge, and also having allies in the workplace. There are two things there, really, under gender bias. And that is a load of things that you could talk about. I will go back to that later, maybe even do an episode on that. So the second one on this reflection that we could have today is the lack of role models. It says here that it can be challenging for women to envision themselves as leaders if they don't have strong role models to look to for guidance and inspiration. Only 8% of S&P's 500 CEOs are women. When women see few other women in leadership positions, it can be harder for them to believe that they too can achieve roles at the executive level. So what the author advises that if you don't have women within your organization that you can reach out to, seek inspiration elsewhere. Role models don't even have to live in your city or be someone you speak with directly. You can read a book by an inspiring woman in your industry or listen to a podcast interview to gain insights, which I'm believing that in the future I will have interviews with women architects and getting some perspective here with today's episode. Yeah, I guess, to be true and honest, I don't really have women role models because I do get inspired by men as role models. But then when we think about the cultural aspect in the gender bias issue at the beginning, then I realized that there is an inherent problem probably in the organization where we lack of women role models. And the role models is out there tend to be women who had to toe the line in being a leader. Or they had to break stereotypes. They had to build up their skills and knowledge much, much more. Or they get a leg up by men who are their bosses. So it's interesting to see that. I'm thinking of someone, I'm not going to, of course, name that person here, but someone, a professor who saw the potential that I had at that time to do a startup in the university. And that helped me to actually concentrate and focus on some of the aspects beside what's happening in the faculty, which is more of the, shall I say, controlled by the men folk. But that's all I'm going to say. So, yeah. I think that was a role model, and I actually thrived under this women leadership under her, and it was good. It helped. So number 3 is work-life balance. Many women face challenges in balancing their work and personal lives, which can make it difficult for them to pursue leadership roles. For example, women may be more likely to take on caregiving responsibilities for children or elderly relatives, which can impact their ability to devote time and energy to their careers. A study in China found that an organizational culture that supports better work-life balance leads to high levels of women in leadership. So the advice given by the author is many companies now offer flexible work arrangements such as working from home or adjustable work hours, which can help women better manage their work-life balance. When possible, women should consider negotiating with this type of arrangements. Setting boundaries and communicating their needs with colleagues and supervisors can also help manage expectation and reduce job-related stress. We'll talk about work-life balance later. Number 4, stereotypes and expectations. There are still many stereotypes and expectations about what a leader should look and behave like, and these often do not align with the traditional roles and expectations placed on women. And as a result, women may feel that they do not fit the mold of a leader and thus may not feel confident in pursuing leadership roles. However, these stereotypes seem to be changing as several studies found that men view women as equally effective in leadership roles. So the author advice is women can challenge stereotypes by speaking up when they encounter them and educating others about the harm they can cause. By sharing their experiences and pointing out the flaws in stereotypes, women can help change the narrative and create a more inclusive workplace. Instead of allowing stereotypes to undermine your confidence, focus on your strengths and achievements. Take pride in your accomplishments and don't be afraid to share them with others. I do find women not really, shall we say, tell people what they have achieved as much as men would. And it's weird encounter that I had with somebody whom I kind of not really close with, and the person works in another department. And in a lift, he suddenly blurted out that I had done a lot of publications, more than people in my department. So that suggestion, when I think about it, is trying to tell me that I should exert myself. Why I didn't do that could be because I was traumatized with the earlier outbursts from my work colleagues and the control that certain individuals had. The thing is, I'm not trying to blame anyone because I'm no more working in that environment. And I think all organizations will be the same in a way if it's to do with promotions, to do with seniority, to do with hierarchy. And in general, women do have this problem, like I said earlier, with the work-life balance, and feel guilty about they're not doing as much as they should for their family, and it's sort of caught on with doing too much in the workplace and not enough for the family, or bringing some of the children along to babies. Well, you're not going to get your work done if you have children in young children that you need to take care of, or there's no nursery or something, or they're big enough to hang around, but you need to supervise them as well as you need to do your work. And this is accepted in a way, but not really. I mean, the people just close one eye because of this practice, and it clearly shows a general misgiving about women and this conflict with regard to their traditional roles that's mentioned earlier with the stereotype and expectations.
Looking for creative inspiration? Graphite Pro Radio explores the intersection of design, culture, and innovation, one conversation at a time. Join us for deep dives into the creative process and game-changing ideas. Start listening today.
This led me to a statement that the head of department decades ago mentioned at the beginning when they had the new department and new faculty, where he mentioned, no, we're not going to have nurseries in this faculty, or a place where people can leave their children, and it's something that is very, it's like you can't really debate on this, because it would really improve the person's output in terms of work performances if they don't have to keep an eye on the children, that somebody else is taking care of the children. And why is it the women having to do that and not the men, yeah, for example? So it's like the gender bias, and in particular this topic of stereotypes and expectation, comes from society itself. The one where we think about women not asserting themselves, it could be the nature of the person not wanting to assert themselves, but in a corporation, in an organization, that's the way the rules of the game is played. And if we can't do that, then we're not helping ourselves when we're in the work environment. Number 5 is limited access to networks and opportunities. And this is the last section in this, which I will read what the author says. Women may have less access to networks and opportunities that can help them advance their careers and become leaders. According to the World Economic Forum, women have a harder time building strategic networks that help them to envision the future, sell ideas, and get the information and resources they need to succeed. They may be less likely to be invited to join professional organizations or be given leadership training and development opportunities. So the advice from the author is attending industry events and conferences can be a great way to meet new people and build your network, whether online or offline. Additionally, there are many online communities and forums for women in various fields. This can become a valuable resource for networking, connecting with other women who share your interests and goals. Volunteering might be another excellent way to meet new people and build relationships. So the conclusion of this article is, while progress has been made, there are still many challenges that women face in becoming leaders. Women must find their own paths and address these difficulties. However, knowing what they are is a first step toward empowerment. It is equally important for organizations to take steps to address these barriers and create a more inclusive and diverse leadership landscape. Our collective power, armed with knowledge, will allow us to overcome these obstacles and see more women leaders in our society. So we're going back to number 5, which was limited access to networks and opportunities. The way I see it, that women where I work could have access to all these conferences. There were fundings everywhere for people to do shall I say, present their work and their research. I think an organization that let women be in leadership roles have an agenda of how they want things to be. And when you have the CEO or the head of the organization showing a certain policy, they appointed people who they feel that closer to them, or people whom they trust, and creating that team. So you don't want to rock the boat, really. If you tend to be the women in that leadership role, you'd want to toe the line or want to be part of that team. And the team will change after 4 or 5 years as what it is, sometimes a couple of years. And the status quo is always going to be that way. But why is it always men who are in these leadership positions, usually the head of it? In this particular organization, they had one woman in being the head or the CEO of it in that highest role, but there was a lot of discontent from people and insinuations that the person will favor women. I think this is something wrong with an organization that tend to be politically motivated, If we have like a proper business corporation, architectural company, of course the directors and the principal director and the rest of the partners dictate who shall get into leadership roles. I do notice that women who get to be the director or the CEO of a company somehow had to have so much skills and so much, shall we say, sacrifice, or have to be a team worker in a way to get there. Had to understand about the political ramifications. And one could always blame gender bias in a culture, maybe from an Asian culture, like what I said earlier. But seeing oneself heading the organization and getting there and making it work and maintaining oneself to be leading the organization to success is the main preoccupation of a women leader. That vision from the get-go, from the beginning, leadership confidence would come from that vision and how they want to get to that point. Knowing the politics of the organization is helpful, but you need to be your own person. And I'm saying it for successful people. I'm not saying there are men in leadership position, because there have been commentaries that you can read where in Quora, for example, Quora.com, I am a 55-year-old women architect. I'm good at what I do, and I'm tired of working for less talented men who have been promoted. How do I push through the glass ceiling? This issue of the glass ceiling was not mentioned by the article that I mentioned for the article under Forbes.com that I mentioned just now. This perception of a glass ceiling could be illusionary, in my opinion. It's a frustration, year in, year out, not getting promoted, and needing to have a fresh way of looking at it. you gotta like accept that some people are very good at politics in the workplace, and they may not be the most clever, but they manage to, in a way they are the cleverest, they get to the top. And it has to do with networking, it has to do with promoting oneself as well, and other things that could be done. But I always think that vision is the missing thing for women. To get yourself, you have a vision of a family, or maybe, you have a vision of a holiday, you're going to be on a holiday, or a vision of making money. But if you don't have a vision of being the head, the vice chancellor or the CEO of an organization, you won't be that. And if you get to be a deputy or just a director, then it's fine, because somehow part of the vision has been captured or have been acquired. So I really would like to put it out there that this is necessary to start a conversation with basic understanding of women in leadership roles from one's perspective. And I'm just giving today an expression of from what I experience and what I think. And I hope that women in leadership roles in architecture would be the theme that I would like to pursue, and have some interviews with some women architects. It's not an easy subject to do, but we shall do it. Thank you very much.